Greetings, traveller. We're going to look at my road bike TT setup. And I'm going to tell you briefly why I love doing road bike TTs, at least relatively short ones. And we're going to talk about why I think everyone should get involved with road bike TTs. Now, some of you who've been following the channel for a while actually probably know that I have a giant Trinity TT bike. And you might think, why are you not filming that for this video? Well, I've kind of fallen out of love of riding the TT bike on TTs because yes, I can go a couple of minutes faster on a 10-mile TT or a 20k TT on my TT bike, but it's not going to really make me a better all-round road cyclist. The beauty of doing it on this bike is that if I can nail a 10-mile TT in an aero position without getting uncomfortable, it's just going to make me a better cyclist all-round. So when I go and do the odd race or the odd sportive or the odd kind of cycling trip abroad, it's just going to help me out all round. And the beauty of this is you don't really need to go and buy any specialist TT kit. You can just turn up on your road bike, make a few additional changes, a few posture changes, a few bike setup changes, and we'll go through those now. And you can have, I wouldn't say fun because it still hurts like fuck, but you know, every week you can turn up, modify a few things, and you don't really need to spend any money. Now I'll drop in a couple of pictures here from a recent TT. I am a massive piece of meat. There's never any fooling of the physics that's going to make me really good at TTs. I'm just too big. CDA is quite big, but I think I've optimized position quite nicely, and that's why I like it, because I've not really spent any money buying kit and equipment to go faster. Yes, I could buy a faster skin suit, a faster TT helmet, but actually when you see how big I am on the bike, it's more just my position that I refine and tweak to try and get better times on the same courses. Tonight is a hilly TT, so we'll consider that in terms of this bike fit. And we'll also talk about my last TT, which was relatively flat but very windy and with quite a nasty road setup. Anyway, let's start with what I perceive to be one of the most important parts about the bike for a TT, and that's tyres. Now, you all know what my favourite tyre is. I'm not sponsored by them, I'm not going to plug them too much. Thumped 1000. Believe it or not, a 32mm on the back. Now, a lot of you are going to scoff at that and say, why would you ride a 32mm in a TT? Well, horses for courses, isn't it? What I always say. If you look at this picture again here, look at the state of that road surface. Now this is my last 10-mile TT from last week. That is really nasty chip and seal, and that's why I ride a 32 on the back. On the front, for aerodynamic reasons, I've got a 28. Now I could go down to a 25, but when you consider, you know, a lot of the pros from like the pro teams ride a 25 on the front for a TT, I'm nearly twice the weight of a professional cyclist. Why would I ride the same tyre? So the smallest I ever go on the road bike is 28 on the front. At 25, I just have to run it so hard it just becomes a bit too kind of rattly. 28 on these rims is the best. This is the Windspace D67. Unfortunately, I haven't got the TR version of this tyre on the front, which I've tested to be faster. I've got a TR on the back, and with my sort of 60-40 weight bias when I'm in my TT position, I really want my quicker tyre on the back, so I've got 32mm tyre on the back. Now, I've gone into this in my kind of aero, CDA and CRR testing videos, but on a smooth road, you can get a fat tyre to have the same rolling resistance as a narrow tyre. They can be exactly the same if the hoop stress or the skin pressure in the tyre is exactly the same, and that does all depend on the wall thickness of the pressure vessel, the cross-sectional diameter and the internal pressure. So on a smooth road, from hysterical losses, so the hysteresis, so the amount of deformation and energy loss in the tyre alone on a smooth road can be the same for a narrow tyre and a fat tyre. Now that's been proven ad infinitum. I've said it in my other videos, and there's lots of resources out there online that will prove that to you. So bicyclerollingresistance.com, the work done by Josh Portner and the other hipster dude that makes some really expensive gravel tyres in America. I can't exactly what they're called now, but I'll try and drop a link down below. So why have I got such a fat tyre on the back if I can get the same rolling resistance from a narrow tyre with better aerodynamics? It's vibration attenuation. That's what I'm going for on these really rough roads. Just because it's a TT, it doesn't mean the roads are perfect. The roads around here are absolutely abysmal. It's chip seal. I'm going for slightly lower pressure in the back tyre to stop that fatigue in my hamstrings and my lower back from a really rough road. I will be riding this predominantly all in aero hoods position, with very sort of stretched out, very arched over back. I just get too uncomfortable if it's too rigid on the back. It's as simple as that. If it's supple enough to glide over that really rough chip seal surface, I can carry on smashing the power out. I'm not risking punches by running a slightly lower pressure, and the aerodynamics of the back wheel just aren't very crucial. So I'd rather run the 32. On a hilly TT like tonight, there's going to be a slight weight penalty, but it's only ever so slight, and on the way back it's predominantly downhill, so that weight is going to help me. This 32 TR is, you know, one of the fastest tyres that I've ever tested, even in a 32. And you say, how do you do CRR testing? Well, you might have seen I've got the CDA sensor from Aerolab. Now, if you keep your CDA constant, so normally what that sensor does is measure CDA changes, like positional or equipment related, so different handlebars, different wheels, different tyres, stuff like that. But if you keep those things the same and vary the pressure, then you can map out CRR for a certain road. So that's how I've got to this stage of knowing that this 32 TR is one of the fastest tyres I've tested. I've got the 28 non-TR on the front, like I mentioned, for aero purposes only. Now moving on from that, that's enough about tyres. I've got the slightly dipped down saddle nose. As you know, I always ride like that. I might dip it down a little bit more for tonight because it is quite hilly. On a flatter TT, I would run it a little bit flatter. Now I've got a very extreme angle of the hoods, which might look laughable, and it is. I wouldn't normally ride like that, but that is my aero hoods position for TTs only. And yes, look at the fucking state of that bar tape. It's knackered. I do need to change this bar tape, but because I only ride this hood position once a week, and then the rest of the week I'm riding around it in a normal position, I haven't changed the bar tape yet, because every time I want to undo the clamps and reposition the hoods and the DI2 wires, like, I don't want to keep wasting new bar tape and potentially ripping it and stretching it. So this is going to stay for a few more weeks before I replace it and get my money's worth out of that. So that's the hood's position, and it now enables me to hold on here quite comfortably and also rest my forearm on there, which alleviates some of the tricep burn you get in the aero hood's position. Now my core is as weak as a floppy frankfurter, so do get sore triceps, and that's kind of the limiting factor when I'm doing TTs. Yes, it's the, you know, burning sensation in your legs and your lungs, but one of the limiting factors of holding the TT position for so long, or my aero hoods position, is actually my tricep fatigue. So that, you know, can be conditioned out. It does get better through the season as you do more TTs and you ride more and more in the aero position. And that all goes back to why I do this on the road bike, because it just helps me train for road cycling in general. And if you're doing any stage races or road races with any pretense of getting in a breakaway or solo, if you can't sustain that aero position for 20 minutes, then you haven't got much chance. Anyway, moving on, I've tested on my aero sensor. One bottle is the fastest setup on this bike. You know, this bike has a very bluff body shape down tube. It's pretty terrible in aerodynamic terms. It's basically a rectangle with kind of rounded edges, and I've tested one bottle is faster than no bottles. Chain wise, very important. This is not exactly a fast chain, it's a KMC chain. It's not the best, but I'll be replacing that with another Dura Ace when this fails. But it's waxed, immersive waxing. I don't know why more people don't do that. I must admit, I've not done it for ages. I've only got into it recently, but it's cleaner, it's more efficient, and you just don't get any black shit everywhere, and it is much kinder to the drivetrain in terms of the cassette and the chain rings and everything, and the chain, because you don't attract so much grit. People think it's a laborious process to get involved with. It really isn't. There's a couple of stages of cleaning when you get a new chain, you know, cleaning the factory grease off. But once that's done, you never have to do it again. And all you have to do is reapply the wax. And if you can get a crock pot down the charity shop, like I got my crock pot for £8 down the charity shop, just leave it plugged in the shed or in the outhouse. I wouldn't leave it in the kitchen because you might get in trouble. It's really not a faff to do. You just need to buy some quick link pliers and clip the chain on and off. And yeah, I've started doing it on the mountain bike. I'll never go back to using a wet lube or any dry lube. Any drip-on dry lube, absolutely pants. Waxing is the way forward. On the back I've got 25 cassette. I never ever would ride with the cassette so small. Actually, I think that's a 28. I would normally run at 1134 just because it covers all the bases. 1134 is my go-to 11-speed cassette. They're quite hard to get nowadays, 1134 Ultegra. But yeah, this is a 25. I'm not going to be hanging around on the TT. Windspace D67 featuring in a video soon. A full test on those is coming up soon. One of the fastest wheel sets I've ever tested. Not surprising, not many spokes on the front wheel and very deep rims. And that's about it, to be honest. Like, it's very similar to my normal road setup, apart from the cassette, I would say, and the hood's position. And you know, this is why I like road bike TTs. It helps you train that aero position, helps you train to, you know, pacing, and it's just going to make you a better cyclist all round. And yes, I could buy, you know, more expensive skin suits or more expensive helmets, but The fun is refining what you already have and optimizing what you already have and getting the most out of your body and the equipment that you've got, and anyone can do it. And I think British Cycling have fully endorsed kind of road bike TTs now in all events, and they're giving points, so kudos to them. And the other thing to note is I'd always ride with a bottle and kind of the practical sides, because I ride out to the TTs, I don't drive, and that's the good thing about doing it on a road bike. It's kind of easier to do that than on a, you know, delicate TT rig with very delicate tyres. I just ride this out there, do the lap, and then ride home gently and get a nice little warm down. The other thing obviously is a tiny little rear light. That's compulsory. That's part of the rules. You have to have the rear light, and I'll probably stick a front light on later just for my own safety. And that's it. Any questions you've got down below, let me know. But I think this is probably the fastest I can make this bike with what I've got, with the exception of the chain. Probably a Dura Ace or Campy chain would make it a little bit faster. The Quark power meter, now that is one of the best cycling purchases I've ever made. I've had this for about 6 years now, probably a bit longer than 6 years, 7 years coming up to. It's pretty old, it's a GXP version, and it's absolutely faultless. It's never missed a beat. Yeah, it's gone through plenty of batteries in its time, and a couple of these Dura Ace 9000 chain rings, which are absolutely beautiful. This one's getting quite worn now too, but it's probably one of the most reliable and complex bicycle components ever. I'm running it in a 5234. It says 5236 there, but that's not. That's a 34 inner. The 52, I was actually pretty undergeared for last week's TT, so I was in 5211 for a lot of it, and that's not an efficient gear by any stretch of the imagination. So if I could, and if I had the means, I would put a much bigger plate on there and then ride in a much bigger cog at the back with a straighter chain line for the slight couple of watt efficiency gains. But like I said, this is not something I'm spending money on. This is my general road bike, and 5234 suits me for most of the riding I do. Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm out on course, driving the course. I got here pretty early, so I don't have to sign on just yet. And I'm just looking at the road surface for the tyre pressures. We're in the Peak Torque Executive Mower Valley, mate, with the beige cream leather upholstery. Guess it's down below. It's kind of chip seal, but it's the smoother side of chip seal, so I think I might up the pressures a little bit. Great views for the climb. I mean, basically the course is a climb all the way out, and then it's going to be a pretty hairy 6 miles back because it's all flat out downhill pretty much. Could almost get the whole bike in that boot if it wasn't for the ISP. Nearly at turnaround point now. I'm going to carry on for a little bit, turn around and get back to sign on because I don't want to be late. Basically, it's a 6 mile climb out. It's rolling, but majority it's all uphill with about 200 meters of elevation gain, and then a 6 mile basically rolling descent on the way back. I'm going to be undergeared for the way back. I just know I'm going to be spinning out 5211. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to front load my power for the first half, because I'll be spending more time on that climb for the first half, distance wise. Because there's no point riding to like an average power on this course, because the average power on the way back is just going to be dropping and dropping and dropping. So I'm going to ride to power on the way out, and then on the way back I'm just going to focus on getting aero. If I'm dying a little bit, it's not too bad because I'm not going to be pedaling down some of those hills. I can coast. So yeah, I've not done this course before. I've ridden the downhill once on a big ride. It is a bit twitchy if there's any wind, but luckily today there's no wind. I just signed on, of course. Now I need a piss. There's nowhere to go for a wee. I'm trying to scope out a little private spot. Not many riders tonight, not even 10 so far, but still got some time before we get going. Right, in the end we've gone for 85 in the front, 75 in the rear. You might think that's weird, but obviously the rear is a lot bigger, so actually I've got more skin stress in the rear than I have in the front. Pointy Hat Club, flat white t-shirts available in the shop. Got my bibs and mountain bike shoes on, so should be good fun. Right, that's it. Finished. And by some miraculous events, your boy took the win through some DNFs and some punctures on the TT bikes. I won. Can't quite remember the last thing I won, if I've ever won anything. Obviously, much higher power on the way out as I planned. So for the first 20 minutes I averaged 345 watts. And then there was a lot of coasting on the way down, and a lot of points where I was just, you know, under geared and spinning out, so I was just tucking for my life. Normally, normalised power for the way out was about 359, and then the way back, which is 6 miles of sort of rolling down hills, I don't know what I averaged, but I finished on an average power of 319, so you can tell that the way back was much less watts, which was the plan. The plan was just to get aero, and actually there's a few hills where I wasn't pedaling at all, so that's why the average power came right down. 270 odd meters of climbing, so that's 19 kilometers and 270 meters, so pretty hilly, nothing too steep, pretty much big ringed it on all of the climbs apart from one, because I was in B25 and it's so cross-chaining. I thought it probably wasn't very efficient, so I did drop it down into the little ring. Socks over the bibs, that's going to trigger some people, but fat lad won an uphill TT. I can't believe it. I actually quite like that TT because of the uphill sections. I don't have to be so tucked for the whole event, you know, like I can actually sit a bit more upright and get a bit more comfortable and put the power out a bit easier. I actually found the downhill section way harder, because just staying in that aero tuck doing 69 k's an hour is just, first of all it's scary because of the vibrations and the bumps, and you just don't know if there's going to be a pothole or a drain cover, and then second of all it's just searing tricep pain. My core is basically non-existent. It's just pushing back on the hoods the whole time with your tricep, because obviously weight is pointing downhill. You can take a bit of weight off your hands if you're really smashing the power out, but like I said, I was spinning out on most of it. But I'm not going to put bigger chain rings on. I don't want to spend loads of money. You know, some of the guys on TT bikes are riding 58 tooth chain rings. Good for them, but I don't want to spend the money. Shout out to David, who recognised me from YouTube at the beginning. A lot of people don't turn up because it's a hilly TT, that one. But if you turn up, less people are entering, bigger chance of winning something. Back in the Peak Talk team car, bikes all packed up, ready to go home for a beer and a cigarette. Cheers, and I'll see you in the next one.